Bear cub was caught inside a giant speaker. What this baby did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The summer air buzzed with excitement as the annual Forest Edge Music Festival transformed the quiet clearing into a pulsating wonderland of sound and color. Flags fluttered against the azure sky, food stalls wafted tempting aromas across the grounds, and a sea of people swayed to the rhythmic beats pouring from massive speakers that stood like sentinels at the edge of the stage. Among the festival-goers was Melody Quinn, a first-time mother who had hesitantly decided to bring her 10-month-old daughter, Luna, to experience the joyful atmosphere. Luna, with her wide hazel eyes and a tuft of chestnut hair, sat contentedly in her stroller, mesmerized by the kaleidoscope of sights and sounds around her. Melody had positioned them strategically at the festival's periphery, under the dappled shade of a towering oak tree, far enough from the thunderous speakers to protect Luna's sensitive ears. "You like the music, don't you, sweet girl?" Melody cooed, adjusting the sun hat on Luna's head. Luna responded with a delighted gurgle, tiny hands reaching toward the colorful festival flags dancing in the breeze. Unknown to the revelers, just beyond the festival's boundaries where the clearing melted into dense woodland, a mother black bear and her curious cub foraged among the berry bushes. The cub, barely 4 months old with glossy fur that gleamed like polished obsidian, kept straying from his mother's watchful gaze, enticed by the strange sounds and smells drifting from the human gathering. The mother bear, whom local rangers had named Willow, grunted softly in warning whenever her cub ventured too close to the festival's edge. But as the afternoon wore on and the music grew louder, the cub's curiosity only intensified. The bass vibrations rumbled through the forest floor, tickling his paws and stirring something primal in his young heart that compelled him to investigate. As the headlining band took the stage, sending the crowd into rapturous cheers, Melody spotted her friend Jasmine waving frantically from a nearby food truck. "I'll just be a minute, Luna love," Melody promised, securing the stroller brakes and making sure Luna was safely strapped in. "Mommy's going to get us some lemonade," Luna babbled happily, distracted by a butterfly that had landed on her stroller canopy. Melody hesitated for a moment. She had never left Luna alone before, not even for a minute. But the food truck was merely 15 steps away, and she would keep her daughter in sight the entire time. As Melody stepped away, on the opposite side of their shaded spot, the bear cub finally seized his opportunity. His mother had become distracted by a particularly sweet patch of blackberries, and the cub slipped away, drawn inexorably toward the pulsating music that seemed to call to him. The cub emerged from the tree line just yards from where Luna sat in her stroller. His small black nose twitched as he absorbed the overwhelming symphony of unfamiliar scents. His eyes, bright with intelligence and mischief, fixed upon the nearest speaker, a massive black monolith that vibrated with every beat drop. The speaker had been positioned at the edge of the clearing, partially open at the back where technicians had been making adjustments earlier. Luna, with the peculiar awareness that sometimes seemed to transcend her infant limitations, was the first and only person to notice the cub. Her babbling ceased as she watched the small creature waddle toward the speaker, her gaze tracking his movement with fascination rather than fear. The cub approached the speaker cautiously, rising on his hind legs to sniff at the strange object. The next bass drop sent such powerful vibrations through the speaker that the cub startled, losing his balance and tumbling backward. Undeterred, he circled the speaker, discovering the partially open maintenance panel at the back. Luna leaned forward in her stroller, straining against her safety straps as she watched the cub squeeze his small body through the opening and disappear inside the speaker's cavernous interior. A moment later, a distressed whimper emerged from within, barely audible over the music to anyone but Luna, whose entire attention was fixed on the spot where the cub had vanished. At the food truck, Melody was caught in an unexpected cue, periodically standing on tiptoe to keep Luna's stroller in view. Everything seemed fine. Luna appeared to be watching something intently, but nothing alarming caught Melody's eye from her distance. Inside the speaker, the bear cub was trapped in a maze of wires and acoustic padding. Each thunderous beat disoriented him further, and his attempts to escape only entangled him more deeply in the speaker's internal components. His frightened cries grew more desperate, but were completely masked by the music to everyone except Luna. Luna's face scrunched in concern as she heard the cub's distress. She tugged against her straps with surprising determination, her tiny mind focused entirely on the source of those plaintive cries. With a dexterity that would have alarmed her mother had she witnessed it, Luna maneuvered her small body, working one arm free of the safety harness. In the forest, Willow had noticed her cub's absence. Her powerful nose traced his scent to the edge of the clearing, and a low, worried growl rumbled in her chest as she cautiously approached the boundary between her world and the humans. Meanwhile, Luna had accomplished the impossible. She had wriggled free of her stroller's safety harness completely. For the first time in her young life, she pulled herself to a standing position without support, clinging to the stroller's edge for just a moment before taking her very first steps, wobbling but determined, toward the speaker where the bear cub remained trapped. No one noticed the small child toddling unsteadily across the grass. All eyes were on the stage, all ears filled with music. No one saw how Luna placed her tiny palms against the speaker's surface, feeling the vibrations of both the music and the frantic movements of the creature inside. No one heard how she cooed softly to the frightened cub, an instinctive attempt to comfort that transcended the barriers of species, and absolutely no one was prepared for what happened next. Luna pressed her ear against the speaker, the vibrations tickling her cheek as she listened to the frightened whimpers of the trapped cub. Something in those sounds awakened a protective instinct in her that defied her tender age. Her small fingers explored the surface of the speaker until they found the edge of the maintenance panel, the same opening through which the cub had entered. "Baba," Luna babbled softly, as if trying to reassure the creature inside. She patted the panel rhythmically, mimicking the gentle way her mother would pat her back when she was upset. Inside the speaker, the cub's frantic movements momentarily stilled at the sound of Luna's voice. His keen senses detected something different about this human, something unthreatening. He moved closer to the sound, his wet nose pressing against the panel from the inside. At the food truck, Melody finally reached the front of the line. "2 lemonades, please," she said, glancing over her shoulder to check on Luna. Her heart dropped to her stomach when she saw the empty stroller. "Luna?" she gasped, abandoning her place in line and pushing through the crowd. "Luna!" Panic seized her as she scanned the area around the stroller. How could a baby who had never even stood on her own simply disappear? Melody's scream cut through the music, drawing the attention of nearby festival goers who quickly realized a child was missing. "My baby! She was just here!" Melody cried, her eyes wild with fear, as she searched frantically between the legs of confused onlookers. Meanwhile, on the festival's edge, Willow the bear grew increasingly agitated. The scent of her cub led directly to this noisy human gathering, and maternal instinct overrode her natural caution around humans. She emerged from the tree line, her massive form drawing shocked gasps from the few people who noticed her. A security guard spotted the bear and immediately reached for his radio, triggering what would soon become a festival-wide panic. Bear on the grounds, east perimeter, he shouted into his radio, backing away slowly while keeping his eyes fixed on Willow. We need wildlife control here now. The music continued to pound through the speakers, oblivious to the dual crises unfolding, a missing infant and a mother bear searching for her cub, crises that were about to collide in the most unexpected way. Luna, unaware of the commotion her absence had caused, continued her determined efforts to help the trapped cub. Her tiny fingers had found a loose fastener on the maintenance panel, and with the uncoordinated but persistent movements of a child too young to understand impossibility, she managed to widen the opening slightly. The cub sensed the change and renewed his efforts to escape, pushing his muzzle toward the fresh air. The panel shifted just enough for his head to emerge, coming face to face with Luna. Time seemed to freeze in that moment. The baby and the bear cub stared at each other, separated by mere inches, two young souls connecting in a way that defied the natural order of things. Luna's eyes widened not in fear but in fascination, and she reached out a pudgy hand toward the cub's face. "Luna! Luna!" Melody's frantic calls grew closer, but her daughter remained fixated on her newfound friend. The cub blinked, equally mesmerized by the small human before him. Then the spell was broken by a tremendous roar that rose above even the festival's music. Willow had spotted her cub's head protruding from the strange black box, and the sight of a human child so close to her baby had triggered her protective instincts. The crowd parted like a wave as Willow charged forward, and screams erupted across the festival grounds. The music cut off abruptly as someone finally noticed the unfolding situation, plunging the festival into a silence broken only by panicked shouts and the heavy footfalls of the approaching bear. Through the chaos emerged a man named Cyrus Walker, a wildlife biologist who had been enjoying his day off at the festival. He assessed the situation with trained eyes, the mother bear charging toward her trapped cub, the helpless baby between them, and hundreds of terrified festival-goers creating exactly the kind of chaos that could turn a tense situation deadly. "Stop! Everyone, stop moving!" Cyrus's authoritative voice rang out as he moved carefully toward Luna. "The bear isn't attacking. She's trying to reach her cub." But his words were lost in the panic. Security guards were drawing weapons. People were fleeing in all directions, and Melody was fighting against the crowd, clawing desperately toward the spot where she had finally spotted her daughter. Luna, remarkably, remained calm in the eye of this storm. Perhaps it was her innocence, or perhaps some deeper wisdom that adults had long forgotten, but she showed no fear as she continued to work at freeing the bear cub, her small hands now joined by the cub's paws as they pushed and pulled at the opening. Cyrus reached Luna just as Willow closed the distance between them. Acting on instinct and years of experience, he scooped Luna into his arms and stepped back slowly, giving the mother bear space to reach her trapped baby. "It's okay," he murmured, though whether to Luna, the bear, or himself, he couldn't say. "It's going to be okay." Luna struggled in his grasp, pointing insistently at the speaker. "Ba, ba," she cried, clearly distressed at being separated from her task. Willow skidded to a halt before the speaker, her powerful jaws closing around the loosened panel. With one mighty wrench, she tore it free, creating an opening large enough for her cub to scramble out. The cub tumbled onto the grass, apparently unharmed but visibly shaken by his ordeal. A collective gasp rose from those close enough to witness the scene. The mother bear and her cub stood face to face with Cyrus and Luna, two mothers' children caught in a moment of impossible tension. Melody finally broke through the crowd, her face streaked with tears, her voice hoarse from screaming. "My baby! Please, my baby!" she begged, seeing her child in the arms of a stranger with a wild bear just feet away. Cyrus held up his free hand in a calming gesture. "Don't run," he said firmly. "The bear will leave peacefully if we just give her space." Something in his confident tone made Melody stop her headlong rush, though every fiber of her being strained to reach her child. "Please," she whispered, her eyes never leaving Luna's face. What happened next would become the stuff of local legend, a story that would be told and retold long after the Forest Edge Music Festival was forgotten. Luna, gazing over Cyrus's shoulder at the reunited bears, broke into a delighted smile. She waved her small hand in what almost seemed like farewell. And then, to the astonishment of everyone present, the bear cub rose onto his hind legs and waved back, a perfect mimicry of Luna's gesture that could not possibly be coincidence. Willow nudged her cub gently, and together they turned and lumbered back toward the forest, pausing just once at the tree line as if to ensure they were being allowed to leave in peace. Then they vanished into the shadows of the woods, leaving behind a stunned silence. Cyrus carefully handed Luna to Melody, who clutched her daughter to her chest, sobbing with relief. "She's fine," he assured the trembling mother. "Not a scratch on her. Your daughter just did something miraculous." As the adrenaline of the moment began to fade, festival security established a perimeter around the area, and wildlife officials arrived to assess the situation. The festival organizers announced a temporary suspension of performances, while they ensured the bears had truly departed and no one was injured. Melody sank onto a nearby bench, still holding Luna tightly. "I only looked away for a minute," she said shakily. "How did she even get out of the stroller? She's never walked before." Cyrus sat beside them, his professional curiosity piqued. "Sometimes extreme circumstances trigger developmental leaps," he explained. "But what I don't understand is how she knew the cub was in trouble. The speaker was nearly soundproof, and with the music playing, no adult heard a thing." Luna babbled happily in her mother's arms, seemingly trying to tell her own version of events, pointing repeatedly toward the speaker and then to the forest. "I should get her checked out by medical," Melody said, her protective instincts returning now that the immediate danger had passed. "Thank you for saving her." Cyrus shook his head. "I didn't save her. I think, somehow, she was trying to save the cub. I've been studying black bears for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like what just happened here." As they walked toward the medical tent, Luna peering curiously over her mother's shoulder, neither adult noticed the small object that fell from Luna's grasp. A tiny wooden token carved with the image of a bear, weathered and ancient-looking, that certainly hadn't been in her possession when the day began. The token landed in the grass, half hidden, where it would remain undiscovered until a very unusual series of events would bring it back into the story. Events that would make today's encounter between baby and bear cub seem almost ordinary by comparison. At the medical tent, a young doctor named Oliver Reed examined Luna carefully. "She seems perfectly fine," he told Melody with a reassuring smile. "No injuries, no signs of distress. Actually, she seems quite pleased with herself." "She was face to face with a bear cub," Melody said, still unable to believe what had happened. "She should be traumatized. I'm traumatized." Oliver chuckled as he watched Luna playing with his stethoscope. "Children often respond differently than we expect. Their perception of danger isn't fully developed." He hesitated, then added, "There's something else, though." "Has Luna been walking long?" "She's never walked before today," Melody replied. "She was only just starting to pull herself up at home." Oliver's eyebrows shot up. "Well, she's walking now. That's quite a developmental jump. Has anything unusual happened recently that might explain it?" Melody laughed incredulously. "You mean, besides her escaping her stroller and having a close encounter with wildlife, I meant before today, Oliver clarified, making notes in Luna's chart. Any changes at home? New experiences? Melody started to shake her head, then paused. We moved to the cabin on Blackwater Lake about a month ago. It's more remote than our city apartment, but I wanted Luna to grow up with nature around her. There's an old local legend about the lake being sacred to... Her voice trailed off as she made a connection she hadn't considered before. Sacred to the bear people. Bear people? Oliver looked up from his notes, intrigued. It's just a story, Melody said quickly. The real estate agent mentioned it when we bought the place. Something about ancient guardians and children with special connections to the natural world. Tourist stuff to make the area sound mystical. Oliver nodded thoughtfully. Well, legends usually have some basis in truth, however small. The human brain loves patterns and meanings. He completed his examination and helped Luna back into her mother's arms. She's physically fine, but I'd recommend following up with your pediatrician when you get home, just to be safe. As they prepared to leave the medical tent, a festival security officer approached them. Ms. Quinn, there's a wildlife official who would like to speak with you about what happened, if you're up to it. Melody sighed, exhaustion beginning to set in now that her adrenaline had faded. Can it wait until tomorrow? I really just want to take Luna home. Of course, the officer said, handing her a business card. They can come to you tomorrow. They're just trying to understand exactly what happened with the bears. It's unusual behavior, apparently. Unusual was an understatement, Melody thought as she gathered Luna's things from the stroller, which had been retrieved from their original spot under the oak tree. The entire day felt like a strange dream. Her baby's first steps taken not toward her waiting arms, but toward danger. The image of Luna face to face with a wild bear cub, the inexplicable wave exchanged between child and animal. As she secured Luna in her car seat, Melody couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted in their lives, that in those moments of heart-stopping fear, some cosmic wheel had turned, setting them on a path she couldn't yet see or understand. What a day, Luna love, she murmured, brushing a gentle kiss against her daughter's forehead. Let's go home. Luna yawned sleepily, her eyelids growing heavy as the excitement of the day caught up with her. But just before she drifted off to sleep, she turned her head toward the window facing the distant forest and raised her tiny hand in what could only be described as a wave goodbye. Miles away, deep in the heart of the forest, Willow and her cub settled into their den for the night. The cub curled against his mother's warm fur, still occasionally startling at phantom vibrations from his time trapped in the speaker. But when he closed his eyes, it wasn't fear he remembered. It was the face of the small human who had tried to help him, the human who had somehow understood his distress when no one else could hear it. And as if connected by an invisible thread that stretched between them, both the human child and the bear cub dreamed of each other that night. Strange, vivid dreams, full of meaning, neither had the words to express, but which would shape their intertwined destinies in ways no one could possibly predict. Meanwhile, at the festival grounds, cleanup crews worked through the night to restore order after the day's chaos. One worker, sweeping the area near the speakers, noticed something glinting in the grass, a small wooden token carved with a bear symbol. He pocketed it absently, thinking it might make a nice souvenir, unaware that in doing so he had become an unwitting player in a story far older and stranger than he could imagine. The worker's name was Theo Bennett, a college student working summer jobs to pay his tuition. As he dropped the wooden token into his pocket, a peculiar warmth spread through his fingertips, but he dismissed it as imagination, his mind dulled by the monotony of cleaning up after festival goers. He couldn't know that the token had already begun to work its subtle magic, forging a connection between all who had touched it. Luna, the bear cub, and now him. The next morning dawned crisp and clear over Blackwater Lake. Melody awoke to find Luna already standing in her crib, babbling excitedly and pointing toward the window. In the month they'd lived in their lakeside cabin, Luna had never before awakened with such energy, such purpose. "What is it, sweetie?" Melody asked, lifting Luna from the crib and following her insistent pointing to the window. Outside, the lake shimmered in the early morning light, its surface smooth as glass except for small ripples emanating from a single point near the shore. Melody squinted, trying to make out what had caught her daughter's attention. There, at the water's edge, stood a black bear cub, unmistakably the same one from yesterday's festival. It was alone, pacing along the shoreline, occasionally looking up toward their cabin with what Melody could have sworn was expectation. "Oh my God," she breathed, instinctively stepping back from the window and clutching Luna closer. But Luna squirmed in her grasp, making eager sounds and reaching for the window. The telephone rang, startling them both. Melody hesitated, torn between answering and keeping watch on the bear cub, but eventually backed toward the phone, her eyes never leaving the window. "Hello," she answered, her voice tense. "Ms. Quinn? This is Ranger Eliza Torres from the Wildlife Management Department. I understand there was an incident at the festival yesterday involving your daughter and a bear cub. I'm on my way to your residence now to discuss it as arranged with security." Melody's heart raced. "There's a bear cub outside my house right now," she said without preamble. "The same one from yesterday, I'm sure of it." A beat of silence, then. "Stay inside. Don't approach it. I'm about 15 minutes from your location. Keep all doors and windows locked." The line went dead, and Melody quickly checked that all entries to the cabin were secure. When she returned to the window with Luna, the cub was still there, now sitting on its haunches, its gaze fixed on their cabin as if waiting for something. "How did it find us?" Melody whispered, more to herself than to Luna. "We're miles from the festival grounds." Luna patted the window glass, leaving tiny handprints as she made soft cooing noises toward the cub. Outside, the cub's ears perked up, and it rose onto its hind legs, nose twitching as if it could somehow catch Luna's scent through the closed window. The scene was so bizarre, so impossible, that Melody almost didn't notice when Luna spoke her first word. "Bear," Luna said clearly, her small finger pressed against the glass. "Bear, come." Melody's knees weakened, and she sank into the window seat, Luna in her lap. "What did you say, baby?" "Bear, come," Luna repeated, more insistently this time. "Luna, help Bear." Melody felt lightheaded. Not only was her 10-month-old suddenly walking, but now speaking in simple sentences. It defied everything she knew about child development. Yesterday's events had triggered something in Luna, something Melody couldn't begin to understand. A car door slammed outside, and Ranger Torres emerged from a forest green truck, her uniform crisp despite the early hour. She spotted the bear cub immediately and approached with slow, deliberate movements, speaking into her radio as she assessed the situation. The cub remained oddly calm, only occasionally glancing at the ranger before returning its attention to the cabin window. Ranger Torres circled wide, keeping a safe distance as she made her way to the cabin's front door. Melody answered her knock with Luna still in her arms, the child twisting to keep sight of the window facing the lake. "Miss Quinn," the ranger greeted her, eyes quickly taking in both mother and child. "I'm Ranger Torres. Are you both all right?" "We're fine," Melody said, stepping back to allow the ranger inside. "But I don't understand what's happening. How did the bear find us? We live nearly 20 miles from the festival grounds." Ranger Torres removed her hat, revealing a streak of silver in her otherwise dark hair. "That's what I'm here to find out. Bears don't typically track humans, especially not over that distance." She glanced at Luna, who was still fussing to return to the window. "May I?" Melody nodded, and they moved together to look out at the cub, who had now been joined by its mother, the larger bear emerging from the tree line to stand protectively near her offspring. "That's definitely Willow and her cub," Ranger Torres confirmed, frowning. "We've been tracking her for years. She's never approached human dwellings before yesterday." "Luna spoke," Melody blurted out. "Just now for the first time. She said, 'Bear, come,' and 'Luna, help, Bear.' She's never said a word before today." The ranger's eyebrows shot up. "That's unusual," she said carefully. "As is her walking, which I understand also started yesterday." Melody nodded, then watched in alarm as Luna began to struggle more forcefully in her arms, reaching toward the window with increasing determination. "Luna, want a sea bear," the child declared, her vocabulary expanding before their very eyes. Ranger Torres studied Luna with newfound interest. "There have been stories in these parts," she said slowly, as if deciding how much to share. "Local legends about children with special connections to the wildlife. The indigenous people who lived here for thousands of years believed that certain children were chosen as bridges between the human and animal worlds." "That's what the real estate agent mentioned," Melody said. "But it's just folklore, isn't it?" Before the ranger could respond, Luna's struggles intensified and she began to cry. Not the standard fussing of a tired baby, but deep, heartbroken sobs that shook her tiny frame. "Bear, sad," she wailed. "Bear, need help." Outside, as if in response to Luna's distress, the bear cub began pawing at the ground, making small, distressed noises that carried clearly to them through the window. Willow became agitated, pacing back and forth along the shoreline. "Something's wrong," Ranger Torres said, her professional demeanor giving way to concern. "This isn't normal behavior for either of them." Just then, Melody's phone rang, an unknown number. She answered hesitantly, keeping her eyes on the bears outside. "Hello, am I speaking with Melody Quinn?" asked a man's voice. "This is Theo Bennett. I was working cleanup at the Forest Edge Festival yesterday, and I found something that might belong to your daughter." Melody's brow furrowed in confusion. "How did you get this number?" "That's the strange part," Theo replied, sounding equally perplexed. "I had this dream last night, super vivid, about a little girl and a bear cub. When I woke up, your name and number were just in my head. I know how crazy that sounds, but after I found this wooden bear token, I've been having these weird feelings, like I'm supposed to contact you." At the mention of a wooden token, Luna suddenly stopped crying and became very still in Melody's arms. Outside, the bears also froze in place, as if listening. "What kind of token?" Melody asked, a chill running down her spine. "Small wooden disc with a bear carved on it. Looks really old. I found it near the speakers where that whole bear incident happened yesterday. The weird thing is it feels warm all the time, even when I first found it on the cold ground." Ranger Torres, who had been listening to Melody's side of the conversation, gestured for the phone. Melody handed it over. "This is Ranger Eliza Torres from Wildlife Management. Where are you right now, Mr. Bennett?" she asked briskly. "At my apartment in Riverdale, about 40 minutes from the festival grounds," Theo answered. "Look, I know this whole thing sounds insane, but I haven't been able to sleep. It's like this token is, I don't know, trying to tell me something. Stay where you are," the ranger instructed. "I'm sending a colleague to your location. Please don't leave, and keep the token with you. After getting Theo's address, she ended the call and returned the phone to Melody. "I think we've found the missing piece of this puzzle," she said, her expression grave. "There's an indigenous archaeologist I work with, Dr. Maya Kingfisher, who specializes in the history and folklore of this region. She needs to see this token." "What exactly do you think is happening?" Melody asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ranger Torres looked out at the bears, who had settled into waiting once more, their behavior eerily patient for wild animals. "I think your daughter and that bear cub have formed a connection that transcends our understanding. The token Mr. Bennett found may be a physical manifestation of that connection, a sacred object from the old stories." "Bear hurt," Luna said suddenly, her small face serious. "Bearer hurt inside." "Bearer?" Melody repeated, confused. "No," Ranger Torres said quietly. "I think she means the person bearing the token, Theo Bennett. Something's wrong with him." As if to confirm her words, Melody's phone rang again, the same unknown number. "Mr. Bennett?" she answered. "Something's happening." Theo's voice came through, strained and frightened. "My chest hurts and the token, it's glowing. Actually glowing blue. I think I need help." In the background, they could hear a crash, as if Theo had fallen or knocked something over. Then the line went dead. Luna began to cry again, but this time her sobs were accompanied by words. "Bearer dying. Bearer dying. Luna, help. Bear, help." Outside, Willow reared up on her hind legs and let out a roar that seemed to shake the very air. The cub darted to the water's edge, dipping its paw into the lake and then touching its chest in a gesture so deliberate it couldn't be mistaken for anything but communication. "We need to get to Theo Bennett," Ranger Torres said urgently, already moving toward the door. "And we need to bring Luna." "Bring my baby? To a stranger's apartment? With bears following us?" Melody's protective instincts flared. "Absolutely not." "Miss Quinn," the ranger said, her voice low and intense, "I've worked in these forests for 20 years. I've seen things science can't explain. Right now, your daughter is the only connection between these bears and that young man, and all three of them are telling us that his life is in danger." As if to emphasize the point, Luna wriggled from Melody's slackened grip and toddled to the front door with surprising speed, placing her tiny palm against it. "Go now," she insisted. "Help Bearer." Melody looked from her daughter to the ranger, then back to the window where the bears waited, their eyes too intelligent, too aware. "This can't be happening," she whispered. "And yet it is," Ranger Torres replied simply. "The question is, what are we going to do about it?" 20 minutes later, Melody found herself in the ranger's truck, Luna securely strapped into a car seat the ranger had fortunately had in her vehicle. As they pulled away from the cabin, Melody looked back to see the bears watching them leave, then turning in perfect synchronization to disappear into the forest. "They're following us," she said, her voice tight with disbelief. "Somehow, they know where we're going." Ranger Torres kept her eyes on the winding road that led away from Blackwater Lake. Dr. Kingfisher has been documenting these kinds of phenomena for years. The indigenous tribes who lived here believed this entire region was a thin place. Somewhere, the boundaries between our world and the spirit world were more permeable. "And you believe that?" Melody asked, keeping her voice low as Luna had fallen into a light sleep, her small face peaceful despite the tension surrounding her. "What I believe doesn't matter," the ranger replied. "What matters is that a young man might be in danger, and everything happening right now suggests your daughter is somehow connected to whatever is unfolding." She pulled out her phone at a stoplight, quickly dialing a number. "Maya?" "It's Eliza. We have a situation that might relate to the Anakeena artifact legends. Can you meet us at an address in Riverdale?" She rattled off Theo's address, then listened for a moment. Yes, that's right. A bear cub, a child, and a token with a bear carving. We'll be there in 30 minutes. The rest of the drive passed in tense silence, broken only by the occasional murmur from Luna as she dreamed. What was she seeing behind those closed eyelids? Melody wondered. What connection had formed between her baby and these wild creatures that defied all natural explanations? When they arrived at Theo's apartment building, a slender woman with long black hair streaked with gray was waiting for them, a weathered leather satchel slung over her shoulder. Dr. Kingfisher. Ranger Torres greeted her with a quick embrace. This is Melody Quinn and her daughter Luna. Dr. Kingfisher nodded in greeting, her dark eyes lingering on Luna with undisguised interest. The child from the festival incident. Word travels fast in my community. Luna had awakened as the truck stopped and was now fully alert, her eyes scanning their surroundings with an awareness that seemed impossible for her age. "Bear her up there," she said, pointing to an upper floor of the apartment building. Bearer breathing slow, the three women exchanged glances, then hurried into the building. There was no answer when they knocked on Theo's door, but Luna placed her palm against it, and to everyone's shock they heard a distinct click as the lock disengaged of its own accord. "Did she just—" Melody began, but Dr. Kingfisher was already pushing the door open, stepping into the apartment with the confidence of someone who had encountered much stranger things than spontaneously unlocking doors. They found Theo Bennett collapsed on his living room floor, the wooden token clutched in his hand, a faint blue luminescence pulsing between his fingers in time with his shallow breathing. He was a young man, perhaps 20, with tousled brown hair and a face that would have been pleasant if not contorted in pain. Dr. Kingfisher knelt beside him, her fingers pressing against his neck to check his pulse. "It's the token," she said grimly. "It's rejecting him." "Rejecting him?" Melody repeated, holding Luna back as the child strained toward Theo. "What does that mean?" The sacred tokens of the Anakeena people weren't meant to be handled by just anyone, Dr. Kingfisher explained, carefully prying Theo's fingers open to reveal the wooden disc. They chose their bearers. This one has clearly not chosen him. The token was indeed glowing, the etched bear design illuminated from within by a pulsing blue light. As they watched, the light flared brighter, and Theo groaned in pain. "We need to get the token away from him," Ranger Torres said, reaching for it. "No," Dr. Kingfisher caught her wrist. "If it's rejecting him this violently, it could harm anyone else who touches it, except for its chosen bearer." All eyes turned to Luna, who had grown unusually still, her gaze fixed on the token. "You're not suggesting—" Melody began, instinctively pulling Luna closer. "Luna bear friend," the child said clearly. "Luna help bearer." Before any of the adults could react, Luna wriggled free from Melody's grasp with surprising strength and toddled to Theo's side. Without hesitation, she placed her tiny hand over his, covering the token. The blue light flared so brightly that everyone had to shield their eyes. When the glow subsided, the token had changed. The bear carving now had a small human figure beside it, and Luna was holding it in her palm, smiling. "Bearer sleep now," she announced, patting Theo's hand gently. "Bearer better." Indeed, Theo's breathing had steadied, and the pained expression had faded from his face. He looked as if he'd simply fallen asleep on his living room floor. Dr. Kingfisher leaned closer, examining the token in Luna's hand with wonder. "I've studied the Anakeena artifacts for 20 years, she breathed. "I've never seen one change its form like this." "What exactly is happening, Doctor?" "Kingfisher?" Melody asked, her voice steadier than she felt. The archaeologist sat back on her heels, gathering her thoughts. The Anikina people believed that certain children were born with the spirit of the animal guardians inside them. These children could communicate with the animals and often served as mediators between the human and natural worlds. She gestured to the token. The tokens were created to help focus and channel that connection. You're saying my daughter is some kind of, what? Animal whisperer? Melody couldn't keep the incredulity from her voice. I'm saying that your daughter has formed a spiritual connection with that bear cub, and this token is both the symbol and the conduit of that connection. Dr. Kingfisher's voice was gentle but firm. The fact that it changed its form when she touched it confirms what we've been seeing. Luna is a chosen one, a bear child in the Anikina tradition. A soft groan from Theo interrupted them. His eyes fluttered open, confusion evident as he took in the group of strangers in his apartment. What happened? He managed. You found something that didn't belong to you, Ranger Torres said, helping him to sit up. Something that's been waiting for its rightful owner for a very long time. Theo's gaze fell on Luna, who was still holding the token, now running her fingers over the changed carving with fascination. The dream, he murmured. You were in my dream. You and the bear. Luna looked up at him and smiled. A smile far too knowing for her age. Bearer, bring token to Luna. Bearer, good helper. Theo stared at the child in amazement. Something about her eyes seemed older than her tiny body suggested, as if an ancient wisdom peered out from behind that innocent face. He tentatively reached toward the token but stopped short of touching it. It was hurting you, Dr. Kingfisher explained. The token was not meant for you to keep, only to deliver. How did you know to find me? Theo asked, looking from Luna to Melody. How did any of this happen? As Ranger Torres helped Theo to a nearby couch, Dr. Kingfisher knelt beside Luna, observing how the child cradled the token with natural reverence. May I see? She asked gently. Luna considered for a moment, then extended her hand, the token resting on her palm. The carving was intricate. A bear and human figure now stood side by side, connected by a series of flowing lines that seemed to shift and move if one looked at them too long. The joining symbol, Dr. Kingfisher breathed. It was thought to be just a legend. I don't understand any of this, Melody said, fighting to maintain her composure. Yesterday, my daughter couldn't walk or talk. Today she's communicating with bears and handling magical tokens. This can't be real. A sharp tapping at the window made everyone jump. Outside, perched impossibly on the narrow ledge of the third-floor apartment, was the bear cub, its paws pressed against the glass. How did it? Ranger Torres began but fell silent as Luna toddled to the window, pressing her hand against the glass to mirror the cub's paw on the other side. Singing time, Luna announced, her voice carrying a strange resonance that hadn't been there before. Song must be sung. Dr. Kingfisher's expression transformed from scholarly interest to urgent concern. The awakening song, she said quickly. If she's referencing what I think she is, we need to get to sacred ground immediately. What are you talking about? Melody demanded, scooping Luna into her arms, afraid to let her daughter near the window with a wild animal just outside. What song? In the Anikina traditions, when a child-guardian bond is formed, there's a ceremony, a song that must be sung at a sacred place to complete the connection properly, Dr. Kingfisher explained, already gathering her belongings. If the connection is left incomplete, both the child and the animal can suffer. The legends speak of past guardians who went mad when the ritual wasn't performed correctly. Theo, who had been silently absorbing this bizarre situation, suddenly clutched his head. "I can hear it," he whispered. "A melody, words I don't understand. Ever since I found that token, it's been like a whisper in the back of my mind." Outside, the cubs scratched at the window more insistently. In the distance, they heard the unmistakable roar of the mother bear. "We need to go to the sacred site," Dr. Kingfisher insisted. "Now, before the connection between Luna and the cub grows any more unstable." Unstable? Melody's fear ratcheted higher. What happens if it becomes unstable? Dr. Kingfisher's expression was grave. The bond between a human child and an animal guardian is powerful but dangerous if not properly consecrated. The old stories tell of children who were torn between two worlds, their humanity gradually giving way to the animal spirit until they were lost to both worlds. Luna squirmed in Melody's arms, reaching for the window again. "Kohana, wait," she said plaintively. "Kohana's scared." "Kohana," Ranger Torres repeated. "She's named the cub," Dr. Kingfisher said, "or perhaps she's remembering its true name. Either way, this bond is deepening by the minute." Melody looked from her daughter to the cub outside the window, then to the three adults watching her expectantly. Every instinct she had as a mother screamed that this was dangerous madness, that she should take Luna and run as far from this strangeness as possible. But the rational part of her brain couldn't deny what she had witnessed over the past 24 hours. Her baby walking, talking, connecting with wild animals in ways that defied explanation. "Where is this sacred place?" she asked finally, her decision made. "Anakeena Falls," Dr. Kingfisher replied. "About an hour's drive from here, deep in the national forest. The waterfall where the Anakeena people performed their guardian ceremonies for thousands of years." "And you believe this will, what? Complete some mystical bond between my daughter and this bear cub?" Dr. Kingfisher met Melody's skeptical gaze with calm certainty. "I believe it will ensure that whatever connection has already formed between them will be balanced and healthy, rather than destructive." Luna had grown unnaturally still in Melody's arms, her small body rigid. When she spoke again, her voice had that strange, resonant quality that raised goosebumps on everyone's skin. "Moon rises 3 times, she intoned, then too late. Kohana lost. Luna lost." Theo clutched his head again. 3 moon rises, he translated, though no one had asked him to. The ritual must be completed within 3 days of the initial bonding, or both the human and animal guardians will be lost. "How do you know that?" Ranger Torres asked sharply. "I don't know," Theo admitted, looking as surprised as everyone else. "The words just came to me, like they've always been in my head, just waiting to be spoken." Dr. Kingfisher was hastily packing her satchel. "The bearer often retains echoes of the token's knowledge," she explained. "Mr. Bennett carried it long enough to become part of the bond, at least peripherally. So we have 3 days, Melody said, trying to focus on practical matters to keep her rising panic at bay. Or until tomorrow night, if we count from when Luna first encountered the cub at the festival. We should leave immediately, Doctor," Kingfisher urged. "The journey to the falls isn't just physical. There are preparations, purifications that should be observed." "What about the bears?" Ranger Torres asked. "We can't exactly take them in the truck with us." As if in answer, the cub disappeared from the window ledge, a small dark shape descending with surprising agility down the side of the building. "They'll find their own way," Dr. Kingfisher said with certainty. "The guardian animals always do." Theo rose unsteadily to his feet. "I'm coming with you," he announced. "I don't know why, but I feel like I'm supposed to be part of this." No one argued. Whatever strange forces had drawn them together seemed to be guiding their actions now. creating a temporary fellowship bound by concern for both Luna and the bear cub. As they left the apartment, Melody noticed that Luna was humming a tune she had never heard before. A haunting melody that seemed to shift between major and minor keys in ways that shouldn't have been possible. The token remained clutched in her tiny hand, occasionally pulsing with that strange blue light. "It'll be okay, Luna, love," Melody whispered, trying to convince herself as much as her daughter. "Mommy's right here." Luna looked up at her with those uncannily wise eyes. "Luna, not afraid," she said simply. Luna and Kahana together. Old song coming back. The drive to Anakeena Falls was tense and strange. They had split into two vehicles, Melody, Luna, and Dr. Kingfisher in the ranger's truck, while Theo followed behind in his own car. The archaeologist spent the journey explaining what little she knew of the ancient guardian rituals, pieced together from fragmentary texts and oral traditions that had survived centuries of cultural suppression. The Anakeena believed that certain children were born with a specific animal spirit intertwined with their own, she explained, as they wound through increasingly remote forest roads. These children weren't considered fully human or fully animal, but bridges between worlds. When they came of age, they would serve as intermediaries, helping their communities live in harmony with the natural world. "But Luna is just a baby," Melody protested. "She can't be some kind of mystical intermediary." The bonds typically formed later, during adolescence, Dr. Kingfisher acknowledged. A child as young as Luna forming such a powerful connection is unprecedented in all the records I've studied. It suggests something unusual is happening, perhaps a response to the increasing separation between humans and the natural world. From the back seat, Luna continued her strange humming, occasionally interspersing it with words in a language none of them recognized. Outside the windows, shadows seemed to pace alongside the vehicle, bears moving through the forest parallel to the road, keeping pace with the truck in a way that should have been impossible for animals of their size and usual habits. "They're following us," Ranger Torres noted, keeping her voice steady despite the extraordinary sight. "The entire journey." As they drove deeper into the forest, the road grew rougher, eventually giving way to little more than a trail. When they could drive no further, they continued on foot, Ranger Torres leading the way with a GPS device, Dr. Kingfisher consulting an ancient hand-drawn map, and Melody carrying Luna, who had fallen into an uncanny stillness, her eyes half closed as if in a trance. Theo brought up the rear, occasionally wincing and touching his temples, as if sounds or images were still filtering into his consciousness, remnants of his brief but intense connection to the token. "We're getting close," Dr. Kingfisher said after nearly an hour of hiking. "Can you hear the water?" Indeed, a distant rushing sound had been growing steadily louder, and now the path began to slope downward toward what appeared to be a vast depression in the forest floor. Anakeena Falls was once the center of an extensive ceremonial complex, Dr. Kingfisher explained as they carefully descended the slippery path. Most of the structures were destroyed when European settlers arrived, but the falls themselves couldn't be erased. The water has been flowing continuously for at least 12,000 years, carving this canyon through solid granite. As they emerged from the tree line, a collective gasp escaped the group. Before them stretched a scene of primal beauty, a crescent-shaped waterfall cascading over a cliff of black stone, plunging nearly 100 feet into a perfectly circular pool below. The afternoon sun caught the spray, creating a perpetual rainbow that arched across the canyon. But it wasn't just the natural beauty that took their breath away. At the pool's edge stood Willow and her cub, Kohana, waiting with the patient stillness of creatures who had arrived precisely where they were meant to be. "How did they get here before us?" Melody whispered. "There are paths through these woods that only the animals know," Ranger Torres replied, her professional demeanor momentarily overcome by wonder. "And perhaps they had guidance we can't perceive." Luna stirred in Melody's arms, her eyes opening fully for the first time since they had left Theo's apartment. She looked at the scene before them, and a smile of pure joy illuminated her face. "Home," she said simply. "Luna and Kohana home." The word sent a shiver through the group. There was something both right and terrifying about a human child claiming this wild place as home, as if the veneer of civilization that separated humans from the natural world had suddenly been stripped away. Dr. Kingfisher moved forward, her movements reverent as she approached the edge of the pool. "We should prepare for the ceremony," she said, opening her satchel and removing several small bundles of herbs, stones, and other objects whose purposes weren't immediately apparent. "What exactly will happen?" Melody asked, still holding Luna tightly despite her daughter's increasing attempts to wriggle free. "Based on the surviving accounts, the guardian child and the animal must both enter the pool while the awakening song is sung," Dr. Kingfisher explained, arranging her items on a flat stone near the water's edge. "The token acts as a focus for the energies of the bond, ensuring they flow in balance between both beings." "Enter the pool?" Melody's protective instincts flared again. "Luna can't swim." "She won't need to, Doctor," Kingfisher assured her. "The legends say the waters of Anakina Falls support those who come in true need. They will not let the child sink." Melody was about to argue further when Luna finally broke free from her grasp, toddling with surprising steadiness toward the edge of the pool where Kohana waited. The bear cub rose on his hind legs, making a soft churring sound that was somehow both greeting and recognition. "Wait," Dr. Kingfisher called, but her voice seemed distant, as if the air between them had thickened. "The preparations aren't complete." But Luna and Kohana were moving with the certainty of beings responding to a call only they could hear. As they approached the water's edge, the token in Luna's hand began to glow more intensely, casting a blue radiance across the surface of the pool. Theo suddenly cried out, falling to his knees with hands pressed against his temples. "The song," he gasped. "I can hear it clearly now. It's not just a song. It's a pattern, a code, He broke off, his eyes widening in shock. "It's changing me. I can feel it changing all of us." Dr. Kingfisher abandoned her preparations and rushed to his side. "What do you mean, changing us?" Theo's gaze was unfocused, seeing beyond the physical world before them. "The song rewrites something deep inside. DNA, soul, something more fundamental than either. The guardian bond isn't just spiritual, it's remaking them at the most basic level." "That's not in any of the texts," Dr. Kingfisher said, her scholarly certainty faltering for the first time. "The bond is symbolic, metaphorical." "No," Theo cut her off, his voice strengthening. "It's literal. The human becomes partly bear. The bear becomes partly human. That's why the ritual must be completed correctly, to ensure the transformation is balanced, controlled." Melody could only watch in horror as her daughter, her tiny, perfect daughter, stood hand to paw with a wild bear cub at the edge of an ancient pool, both of them illuminated by the otherworldly glow of the token, both seemingly on the verge of a transformation that defied everything Melody understood about the world. "Luna!" she cried, rushing forward. "Luna, come back to Mommy!" But her voice couldn't penetrate whatever trance had enveloped her daughter. Luna and Kohana stepped forward in perfect synchronization, entering the dark waters of the pool. To Melody's astonishment, they didn't sink. Instead, the water seemed to firm beneath them, supporting them as they walked further from shore, the blue glow of the token creating a path of light across the surface. When they reached the center of the pool, directly beneath the cascading falls, they stopped. Luna held the token high above her head, and the strange humming she had been doing for hours suddenly burst into full song, a child's voice carrying impossible harmonics that echoed off the canyon walls, creating the impression of a phantom choir surrounding them. "What's happening?" Melody cried, poised at the water's edge, torn between rushing in after her daughter and the instinctive knowledge that she would only disrupt whatever powerful forces were now in motion. "The awakening," Dr. Kingfisher whispered, her academic detachment completely abandoned. "It's really happening. After all these centuries, we're witnessing an Anakinna-Guardian bond being formed." The water around Luna and Kohana began to swirl, rising in a gentle spiral that enveloped them both. The blue light from the token intensified until it was almost painful to look at directly. Above them, the rainbow created by the waterfall's spray shifted, its colors deepening and expanding until it formed a complete circle above the pool, a phenomenon that should have been physically impossible. Luna's song reached a crescendo, her small voice carrying notes that no human throat should have been able to produce. As the final, impossible harmony hung in the air, the column of water and light surrounding her, and Kohana collapsed inward, momentarily obscuring them both from view. When the waters settled, Luna and Kohana stood as before, seemingly unchanged, and yet, to the watching adults, undeniably different in ways that were difficult to articulate. There was a new awareness in the cub's eyes, a depth and intelligence that went beyond animal instinct. And Luna, though still physically a human toddler, moved with a grace and confidence that belonged to a much older child, perhaps even an adult. They turned as one and began walking back toward shore, still supported by the mysteriously solid surface of the water. The token, now clutched between Luna's hand and Kohana's paw, had stopped glowing, its purpose apparently fulfilled. As they reached the shore, Melody rushed forward, gathering Luna into her arms, checking her frantically for any sign of harm or change. Luna looked up at her mother with eyes that were still her own, and yet held something else now, a wisdom, a wildness that hadn't been there before. "Luna." "Okay, Mama," she said, her voice once again that of a normal child, though her articulation remained advanced for her age. Luna and Kohana together now, right way. Willow, who had watched the entire ceremony from the shore with remarkable calm, approached her cub, sniffing him carefully. Something passed between mother bear and cub, a communication beyond human understanding, and then Willow did something extraordinary. She dipped her massive head in what could only be described as a bow to Melody, one mother acknowledging another across the seemingly unbridgeable divide of species. "The bond is complete, Doctor," Kingfisher said, her voice hushed with awe. "Luna and Kohana are guardians now, joined in purpose while remaining separate in form." "But what does that mean for Luna's future?" Melody asked, the immediate fear for her daughter's safety giving way to longer-term concerns. How will this change her life? How will it change Kohana's? Before Dr. Kingfisher could respond, Theo approached, his earlier distress replaced by a strange calm. "I can answer that," he said. "At least partially, the token has shown me glimpses." He knelt beside Melody, looking at Luna with newfound respect. "Luna will grow as any child does, but she'll always carry the awareness of the natural world that most humans have forgotten. She'll understand the language of bears, and Kohana will understand human speech through her. They'll remain connected, even when physically separated. And as they grow," Dr. Kingfisher added, consulting a small leather-bound book she had withdrawn from her satchel, "they'll develop abilities that serve their purpose as guardians. Luna may gain heightened senses, unusual strength, deeper connection to the rhythms of the earth. Kohana will develop reasoning capabilities beyond those of normal bears, perhaps even the ability to communicate complex ideas to Luna, who can then translate for others. Balance, Theo said, the word seeming to come from somewhere beyond himself. That's the key. The human teaches the bear about mercy, compassion, abstract thought. The bear teaches the human about strength, instinct, living in harmony with the natural world. Together, they become something greater than either could be alone. Ranger Torres, who had been maintaining a respectful distance throughout the ceremony, finally approached. "And what does this mean for my job?" she asked, her practical nature reasserting itself. "Am I supposed to tell wildlife management that this bear cub is now partially human and has a special connection to a toddler?" Dr. Kingfisher smiled. "I suggest you classify Willow and Kohana as subjects of an ongoing cultural research project in cooperation with indigenous authorities. It's technically true, and it will give them protected status without raising too many eyebrows." Melody held Luna close, still struggling to absorb the reality of what had happened. "And us? Do we just go back to our cabin and pretend everything is normal? How am I supposed to raise a child who's bonded to a wild animal?" "Not alone, Doctor," Kingfisher said firmly. The Anakeena traditions included a network of support for guardian pairs. I have connections with elders from several tribes who preserve these traditions. They can provide guidance, teaching, community. "And I'll help too," Theo said, surprising himself with the offer. "I don't fully understand my role in all this, but the token chose me as its bearer for a reason. I think I'm meant to be part of Luna and Kohana's story." Melody looked from her daughter to the bear cub, who were now sitting side by side at the pool's edge, Luna's small hand resting casually on Kohana's fur, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. There was a rightness to the image that transcended all Melody's fears and doubts. "I moved to Blackwater Lake because I wanted Luna to grow up connected to nature," she said softly. "I just never imagined it would be quite so literal." Luna looked back at her mother and smiled, a smile that was still that of a child, but now carried the promise of something more. "Luna and Kohana help Forest," she said. "Help animals, help people. Big job." "Yes, sweetheart," Melody agreed, feeling as if she were standing at the threshold of a world both ancient and entirely new. A very big job indeed. As the group prepared to leave Anakeena Falls, gathering their belongings and discussing practical arrangements for the future, none of them noticed the shadow that briefly passed across the rainbow still arching over the pool. A shadow shaped like neither human nor bear, but something ancient and watchful that had waited a very long time for this day to come. Nor did they notice the small red eyes gleaming from a crevice in the canyon wall, observing with malevolent interest as the newly bonded guardians departed. Eyes that belonged to a creature that had its own plans for the power Luna and Kohana now shared, plans set in motion long before any of them had been born. The first guardian pair in generations had awakened, just as the old prophecies had foretold. But the prophecies also spoke of darkness rising to meet the light, of trials and tribulations that would test the bond to its breaking point. And somewhere in the depths of the forest, that darkness was already gathering, preparing for the battle to come.